Now, I know you figured out that the Vortex is a daily grind. It's something you just gotta do, gotta do, gotta do. Okay? Now, some people love that. They like the theory craft and advancing their teams, getting every little cog in the machine to fit just right to really min-max your damage. Some people hate that. They just see it as a necessary evil to get those daily rewards. You get some Stardust if you rank out on the leaderboard. You get Affinity Solvent, Worm Marrow, some Starlight Dice, just good general rewards daily to help you progress and, expand your roster and teams. In today's video, I'm going to give you five tips that you can use to stay consistent, really up your damage, and take your team to that next level. Now, some of these tips do require that you're farming legendary gear. We are, trying to hit that in-game goal as quickly as possible. Or it may even require that you roll some dice. Try and get another epic, couple champions to fit these roles. Now, if that's where you're at, stay on the grind, stay on the hustle, but these tips I would consider baseline for any good Vortex team. So as you're planning, as you're pushing in dungeons and pulling more champions, make sure you plan accordingly. Now, our first tip comes right at the heart of creating your Vortex team in champion selection. We're going to go in here and we're going to find a few champions to fit some roles that we desperately need, which is, in my opinion, the most important debuff in the game. We need to find our decreased attack champions, our attack penalty champions. And I say champions because you need two of them. in my honest opinion, you take two decreased attack champions and you put them on a rotation and keep it up for the full fight. Now, what makes a decreased attack champion? Well, in my opinion, it takes a few things. 3 things. Number 1, it needs to be on an ultimate so that way you can time it in the team setup later on, and we'll get to that. Number 2, it needs to have a 100% proc chance. Now, you might need to scroll it up to get the 100%, but as long as it's 100%, it's solid. The third thing, and I don't think this fluctuates, is it needs to be a 10-second debuff. Now, there are some exceptions to this, like Urgander, who has a really crazy special passive to landing decreased attack. You could say that is enough to be a decreased attack champion, but in my opinion, it takes these 3 things so you can control it, it stays consistent, and you know when it's going to land. Now, tip number 2 is also in champion selection, but it's also paired under the assumption that you have pulled a duplicate epic from your Starlight or maybe even your Helio dice to pick up an artifact called Unclean Crown. Now, if you're really lucky and you got a dupe legendary, you might have Witch's Remains. They both kind of do the same, only Witch's Remains does the bigger version, and it's full AoE, while the Unclean Crown is single target decreased defense by itself. Now, as you can see, it has a 75% proc chance. Now, just like with the decreased attacks, we want this to be consistent. We want as much uptime and reliability as possible. So how do you get that out of a 75% proc chance? Multi-hit champions. In my opinion, just like the certain requirements to be considered a decreased attack champion, in my opinion, there's certain requirements to be considered a decreased defense champion or an Unclean Crown or Witch's Remains candidate. And really, the only main thing is that it's a multi-hit skill. Am I blind? One of the best ones is actually a champion that we are given. I got a filter on. Is actually a champion that we are given, Erich. He is a wild champion. He has a 5-hit. It's AoE, but it's 5 single hits randomly on champions. But against a boss, single target, it's 5 consistent hits on 1 champion. So we've already maximized our potential on someone like Erich. Another very popular one that's constantly talked about and very good with Witcher's Remains is Vortex. He is a full-filled AoE with 3 hits. That's all we're looking for, is enough to cover the enemies that we want to debuff, and multi-hits. That's all it takes. Put the crown or the Witcher's Remains on one of these champions, and that will give you the most chance at proccing for the defense down debuff. Very important. It's a huge boon to your damage done, and you really want some consistency out of this, so I always suggest a multi-hit champion. And to be honest, as far as, someone like Varesh or Erich, if you're wanting to get damage out of them, it honestly doesn't take very much to get the accuracy you need on most of these bosses. And especially with the multi-hit, you can even be under the suggested accuracy a bit. Like I'll often run mine at like 240, 250 accuracy, and they still consistently place it within their multi-hit skills. But it doesn't take much. The crown and the witch's remain, they come with their own substantial amount of accuracy. And then for your negative rune, your right hand side rune, it can have a main stat accuracy. So you get an accuracy main with maybe like some crit rate substats or defense substats, whatever you're looking for. And it really doesn't take much out of the build up for your kit for getting damage on someone like Erich or Vorish. All right, now on to our third tip, and this one, a lot less of a tip and more of a little helpful guidance or direction to push everybody in. Now, there is a lot of champions out there that do really good damage, such as Varesh that we was talking about earlier. Varesh champion, as you can tell, he's a support. We also have, a fan favorite here, Sigrid, who is another support, damage dealer. Irina, I call her Irene. Irina, another rare, who can do significant damage for you. These champions do really good damage. But in my honest opinion, and from some testing, the best way to get to really increase your damage is to get a damage combo using one of these synergy damage types. Dauntless, Wild, Summon, Rally, Poison, Frost. Now, each one of them have their own areas of the game that they're a little stronger on or a little weaker on, but most of all of these can do single target or even AoE damage very successfully, and they flow off each other. So tip number 3, get you 2 from one of these damage types and build and develop into it. Maybe you don't pick the right ones. Maybe you don't have the great ones for, if you're going for wild champions and you don't have Tonalyn. Everyone knows, extremely strong. I run a wild team with Erich and Tonalyn as my damage duo. Erich as my crown champion, my defense down champion. But they do insane damage. And if you don't have Tonalyn, as many people, I think Odd One put out a video not too long on it, Thea is another good wild champion, rare, easily accessible, free to play, does massive damage because of the synergy of their wild checks in between each other. Same thing can be said for Dauntless. We have Nimbus and Shaltar and a few good options there. Rally, I actually recently built up a Welby and an Ivania, and I will be doing a video on those two. Their synergy is insane. I love it. But I built them up, and 2 rares, and they do significant damage. Depending on they are rare, so it depends on your gear. Stat requirements can be high, but they will get the job done. All right, we're going to take a break from suggestion champions and, hoping that you pull the right thing and everything to fill all these roles. And we're going to look at some hard grind.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things
some hard ground gear. Hopefully you are grinding up some legendaries in stage 8s and stage 9s of the dungeons. But if not, then just try to remember what you hear in this video and, put it towards your progression as you build along. Now, a little warning, a little heads up here. The sets change in between seasons, so as of right now and creating this video, these suggestions are good for season 1. Maybe some of these sets will come back in future seasons. I'm kind of hoping so, because what they've swapped between season 1 and season 2, I kind of like some of the sets that they took away, so hopefully they'll be coming back, but I can guarantee you that these sets are at least in season 1. And our first set that we're going to start with is actually the Ancestral Protection set, the Green Shield set. And this has an effect that is extremely strong. It's essentially comparable to an ally protection effect, but with a little bit of, not bolster. What's the other set that they had? It negated some AoE damage or whatever. This 3-piece effect is the wearer takes 15% of the damage that otherwise would be taken by the ally. So there's the ally protection, niche to it. But on top of that, the champion would also gain 15% damage reduction. Now, I don't believe that this is like a 1-for-1 that it takes 15% damage from all of the other allies' damage, and then just pretty much negates it. It's kind of like one of those additive, multiplicative type of things. Your champion's going to take the damage, and then he gets a overall general damage reduction. It probably is close, but not exactly. Now, here's something to keep in mind. Only one character can trigger this damage redirection effect for the same team. So this is that set where you only need one of these per team. And to be honest, especially in harder content, Fae, Inspire, and all that, I would highly suggest having one of these on all of your teams. This is definitely a set. Now, granted, you don't need a bunch of sets. Maybe some, a set that has some good resistance, some set that has some great defense, stuff like that. But I do suggest that you farm up some of this and get you at least one of these sets for your Vortex team. Very strong, very good, highly suggested. Now, the second set, or the fifth tip that we are dropping here, is another set, and it's going to be one that does get removed in Season 2. It's one of my favorites. I love it. It's consistent, and even though it doesn't really seem overly strong, if you really utilize it, it works out. And that is the 3 Ears Emblem set. It's a skill haste set that also has accuracy, so it's very common. I'm sure you have plenty of pieces out there. Very good set that you'll need multiple pieces for, so definitely go out there and farm it up. And the 3-piece effect is, after the wearer unleashes their ultimate skill, all allies will obtain 15% extra attack for 10 seconds. Now, if you remember, the decreased defense, the decreased attack, all these are on 10-second durations. So you can essentially do the same thing you do with the decreased attack and have 2 of these sets on a rotation. Maybe it's your 2 decreased attack champions. Maybe you put them on a rotation where every time they'll land the decreased attack and they'll activate this set. Now, this set can only be active once at a time, but it does refresh every time that a champion that has it uses it. So you can consistently get the full uptime, 100% time, with utilizing 2 of these sets. All right, now I know I said that there'd be 5 tips, but I'm actually going to throw a little bonus in here. I've mentioned a lot about setting these champions up and setting them on rotation, so I wanted to kind of show how it's done. It's very simple. You go into your champion or your team setup, save your team, go to edit skill settings, and as you can see here, my team, I've got a little willy-nilly because of Jorn here. Awesome champ. I'll be doing a video on him in the future. But due to his effects, I don't really want to set a timing, but I can very easily go ahead and set one on Crisis. He's my decreased attack champion. Go ahead and set him on a 20-second, and go ahead and set Furbath, my other decreased attack champion, on a 20-second. And if you notice, Furbath cast his at 14.5 seconds. Exactly 10 seconds later, Crisis will cast his. Even when I didn't have none of this side set, I still kept them at a 10-second difference, so that way they can keep this 100% uptime on this decreased attack. But yeah, I just wanted to show you that, kind of show you what it looks like. It's pretty simple, and you can watch it work. The first, and at about 14.5 seconds in, which will be right before skill 3 of the boss, Furbath will go ahead and drop it, and then exactly 10 seconds later, before skill 1 of the boss's rotation, Crisis will go ahead and put up his shield and do his decreased attack. It's pretty simple. In this team, I have Furbath with a 3-year set, and I have Jorn with the 3-year set, so that way they can also alternate at a 10-second difference their 15% increased attack buff. You'll see, as you can tell, like, Conlin's over here with all his self-given buffs and looking all beefy. But if you look over here at Furbath and Crisis, they're not supposed to have any buff. That sword buff right there is the 15% attack buff, and you'll notice it never drops off. It just stays on 100% time. Now, we're not going to sit here and watch this run the whole time, but we'll go ahead and skip to the end. And as you can tell, all of my champions were able. Of course, Tonalyn took off, but I was able to keep a lot of my less DPS focused, support and tanks, and give them a real good boost and get their damage up as much as possible. Again, even scraping out those last few million to get up over 25 million, it can be a huge thing. Now, this is actually kind of low RNG, due to Jorn being in my team, it's kind of RNG whether his battle skill procs off enough to really speed up my team and ramp up my team. I'd say I average around 32 to 34. And even though Christ is in here and done a little bit of damage, mainly only in here for shields and decreased attack. Easy to find another decreased attack champion like Sigurd, who could be a DPS and a decreased attack champion, or whoever. And then run like Adolphus in Crisis' spot for shields. It's not too difficult. Crisis is also my champion that's in the Ancestral Protection armor, the green shield set. So that way he can draw some of that damage off of Furbath and the rest of the team, keep them alive, keep them up there, pumping out that damage. All right, well, I hope these tips helped you. Stay consistent, get your damage up, really pull your team together. I know they've helped me quite a bit. I didn't just fall all into them. I kind of started picking up things and really trying to put as much into my team as possible to get that damage up. At one point in time, even with Tonalin and Erage and, the legendaries and stuff, if the weekly Vortex boss buff wasn't good for me, then it wasn't good for my team, and I would struggle right under the 25 mil. So I hope this helps. I hope it gives you a goal. And again, little primer here. Some of these tips really only work for season 1. Hopefully they'll come back in future. The sets will come back in future seasons, and they'll be valid then too. I definitely like some of them, but regardless of what happens in the future, I will be posting more content and tips like this on a season by season basis to really kind of give people the best advantage to getting the most out of their team. So make sure you hit that subscribe to stay up to date on all of that. If you have any good universal tips for teams, please leave them in the comments. Even if you don't have one, go down there and check. There might be something really good down there that I wasn't able to put in this video, wasn't aware of it in time or whatever. Who knows? But that's it for this video, and as always, happy grinding.